Hello everybody, this is J.W. Najarian with On Purpose Magazine, and today we're here at the Viridian Conference with Ken Kragen. How you doing, Ken?
Terrific, J.W. Great. Like to be here.
Hey, that's great. You know, we're sitting here, we've been talking for a little bit about all kinds of crazy stuff. First of all, for people who don't know Ken, Ken is, well, you're a producer, right, mainly?
Yeah, I'm kind of eclectic. I do a little bit of everything, but I've done in the entertainment field, producing movies, producing television shows, managing, really, I came to all of this managing superstar talent, or talent that at least I built up into superstars. You know, Kenny Rogers and Lionel Richie and Olivia Newton-John and the Bee Gees and a lot of big country artists over the years. Trisha Yearwood.
One of my favorites, Jay Giles. Right?
Oh yeah, Jay Giles Band. What a fun band. Party band.
Party band.
We had big parties. It was great, including on stage.
We're not going to get into those today, but maybe when the camera goes off, we can talk a little more about that.
Yeah, I know.
But I wanted to talk to you first of all because one of the things that you're very well known for, besides mega talent, and didn't you have like how many at one time? Did you have like how many hits out at one time? Was just some crazy number?
Yeah, in the early 1980s, we had my company. Basically, the artists we represented had 41% of the top 10 records in America that year. For a year, Billboard did a big article on it. I used to say it was 48%, and the other day I happened to come across the article and realized I've been lying all along. But 41% is still pretty amazing for one little management company. That was an amazing year.
No, there wasn't, and that's a lot of talent involved in that.
Yeah, a lot of big talent, and we were very fortunate. I think I have good judgment about talent. I think I've been very fortunate. If I was blessed with any one quality, it was that ability to kind of look at somebody and say, that's a star. That even when they weren't, or before they were, that there was some quality about them. Superstars have that extra dimension. There's something extra special about superstars.
Yeah. Ken, you're talking about the amount of superstars, the amount of hits that were going on in the 80s that you dealt with. And one of the things we know you best for is your philanthropic work, Hands Across America, and, of course, the iconic We Are the World.
Yeah, those were kind of amazing. I always felt that my life prepared me for those moments to be able to accomplish those things. Everything I'd done, even since I was growing up, and the charity of my parents and what my mother and my father inspired me to do as a teenager, really. My mother sent me an article where I was taking a check from a concert I'd put on for $64 and giving it to the Red Cross. $64. But, it was, and then the ironic thing, the interesting thing is, I don't know, 40 years later, whatever, 30 years later, I'm handing a check for $64 million that we raised from We Are the World. So my whole life kind of prepared me. The talent that I managed at that point, when Harry Belafonte called me in 1984, just before Christmas, said we've got to do something about the people starving in Africa, and Geldof had already done Band Aid in England. I said, come on, we're going to just do the same thing. We've got bigger artists here. We can do it bigger. We can do it wilder and better, and make more doing it. And we made 6 or 8 times what they did, just because we had Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie and Kenny Rogers.
God's great big family. So let's start giving. There's a chance we're taking our lives. We're taking our own lives. It's true. It's true. We'll make a brighter day. Just you and me. When you're down and out, when you ain't no love at all. But if you just believe, you know that love will go. And it ain't right.
We had, a list of artists here that just was an amazing. They were the biggest artists in the world.
It's funny because every time I watch that video, I after all the years it's been around, I still notice somebody. Isn't that Cyndi Lauper in the back?
Yeah, yeah.
You always notice somebody new.
Funny night that night, Cyndi Lauper had all this jewelry on, and when they were doing the solos, we kept hearing these strange sounds, and it was Cindy's jewelry banging, and she had to take it off. But no, there were some amazing moments that night. Probably the most interesting thing for me, we recorded all night, and first to start with, there had been the American Music Awards. I set We Are the World on the night of the American Music Awards because the artists would be in town and they could just drive over after the awards and record.
Okay.
So we started recording about midnight, or 11 o'clock, something like that. And they all drove over, and they were all in limousines. They were coming from the award show, and a crowd had formed at the front of the studio gates. And all of a sudden, this guy in a leather jacket and cut-off gloves comes forcing his way through the crowd, and he comes up to me, and it's Bruce Springsteen, and he says, "Hey man, I got a great parking place across the street on La Brea." And when Bruce drove himself, pushed his way through the crowd, who didn't even realize it was Bruce Springsteen pushing his way in, and walked in on his own. I thought that everybody else was arriving in a limousine. It was typical Bruce. But those kind of stories. The end of the night was quite something. After we had recorded at 8 in the morning, there were just 3 of us left in the studio. There was myself and Diana Ross and Quincy Jones. And we were sitting on the floor of the studio crying and huddling together, the 3 of us. It had been such an emotional night. And it was 8 in the morning. We'd been going all night.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I walked out of there.
All those egos.
Oh, it's interesting.
Drop them at the door?
Yeah, they did. I mean, that was the great line. Quincy got that line at about a week before we recorded. We got together to do the demos with Michael and Lionel, and the band from Toto played the rhythm tracks, and we recorded at Kenny Rogers' studio. And afterwards, we sort of all sat around in a spot where we could just talk about what we were going to do. And that's where Quincy said, I've got to write a letter to the artist that'll go with the music and everything, and it's going to say, "Please leave your egos at the door." And that was a classic line,
right.
One of the great lines of all time. 10 years later, the 10th anniversary of We Are the World, right. I gave a door to Quincy, a big door with a plaque on it that said, "Leave your egos at the door."
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. I want to talk to you a little more about the philanthropic here, because we're at the Viridian conference, and Viridian Energy, they're all about alternative energy, green energy, renewable energies, sustainable energies.
Something I believe in a lot.
Right.
I certainly do.
And so, and that's what I wanted to find out. I wanted to hear about your thoughts on why that's important.
Well, I mean, it's the way we have to save the planet. I mean,
it's kind of a no duh. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, anybody who says we don't have climate issues or pollution issues or other issues is just crazy. I mean, the facts are the facts. I'm a very scientific. I started out to want to be a microbiologist. Wow. And then an engineer, and I'm still into all of that stuff. And it's just crazy to ever think that we don't need to do these things. These alternative energies are critical. I mean, even if they didn't, gases and other things didn't affect the environment, the mere fact that these are exhaustible resources, whereas solar energy is just simply not exhaustible, not at least for, several billion years till the sun runs out.
Right, and it's really simply not just always about just taking care of the planet and being responsible. Nowadays, it's getting to the point where the technology will let you save some bucks.
Yeah, that's been the great thing. The increase in technology, the ability now, you can save serious dollars with solar energy. Depending on your situation, it works not for everybody, but it is, the situation is such that for most people, this is the smart economic thing to do, as well as one that helps the environment.
Yeah, that's great. And so tonight you're going to get to hear a little more about that energy. You're going to sit in, maybe even you may even get to talk. I'm not sure about that, but we're really happy to have you here. And so what's next for Ken? I know you're not done, right?
No. I'm actually working on an enormous project right now called Rally Song. That's where 100 of the biggest stars in the world are going to raise $100 million over 100 days, and each artist picks the charity of their choice. So there won't be 100 different charities, but it'll be close to it. Right. And so I'm doing that. I'm mainly a nonprofit consultant now. I've just taken on big work for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation.
Are you working with Sugar Ray?
Well, no, I'm working. I'm working strongly with the organization that focuses specifically on type 1 diabetes,
right,
which is devastating.
That's JDRF.
Yeah, JDRF, 3 million people with it. and we're working on a number of big things for them in the next year. We're very close to breakthroughs in technology. There were 2 announced just the past week, and there are some real technological breakthroughs that are going to make.
Oh man, just came out with inhalable insulin, did he not?
Yeah, and here's the ironic part of that, or the interesting part of that. I bought my last house from Al Mann.
Oh yeah.
And I knew him really well. I've had lunch with him a few
You
times.
have the house with the swimming pool in the.
He had, yeah,
that house.
he had that was the house that Al has, and I bought down the hill from him. He owned that whole group of estates, and got to be quite friendly with him at the time. I haven't talked to him in a number of years, but I was so pleased. I knew that he was working on something in that area. You know, he originally invented the diabetic pump, the insulin pump.
At Minimed.
Yeah.
I used to work for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was my boss.
Oh, my God. Well, yeah. And then now I think it's called Mankind is the company. So that was just a interesting coincidence for me, because I'd already gone, when that was announced, I knew it was in the works. But when that was announced, I had gone to work for JDRF. So that was, you know, an excellent. And then the other thing that was announced this week is they concluded the first round of research on an artificial pancreas.
Wow.
And
that's huge.
Yeah,
They've been trying to do that for a long time.
yeah, they probably won't be on market until 2017, but they tested it on 52 people of all ages and had considerable success. Now they'll refine it and they'll increase it, and there's a lot more testing to go.
Right.
But there are some breakthroughs coming, and I'm trying to do everything I can to assist that.
Right, that will allow the chronic disease of type 1 diabetes to be almost a non-issue.
Well, at least, you know, the biggest problem that happens is type 1 diabetes is hereditary.
Right.
And although very often it isn't diagnosed till teens, a lot of times people know when they're babies, I mean, or at least their families do. And when they get into their teens, and this is something I've been told, I haven't personally experienced, but when they're in their teens, they get, at times, they just don't maintain their blood sugar levels properly. And then you get in real trouble. If you're type 1 and you don't really take care of yourself and give your insulin injections in the timely fashion, you know, you can go blind, you can lose toes and fingers and things. There's all kinds of terrible, and you die from it. You can go in a coma. So the type 1 is a 24/7 problem, and you know, the ability to have an artificial pancreas situation, even though much of it is external, but it would then feed the insulin to you.
Well, let me ask you: did somebody in your life were you touched by the type 1 diabetes?
No, you know, it's interesting. It was through a client of mine who had written a song called 40 Point Swing that was perfect for kids to learn to keep their sugar levels within the 80 to 120 range, that I got involved in it, and he brought me in. And then I had never, like most people in this country, I thought type 1 was type 2, you know, lose weight, maintain your diet, and you're okay, you know. It isn't. It's much more serious than that. And when I started to hear the personal stories and meet people who were either dealing with it personally or had children that they were taking care of, I was just simply blown away by the severity of it, and it motivated me to get involved. And so I'm doing that. You know, nowadays, even at my age, I've got 8 projects going. I just sold a series, to Fremantle, a reality series. Have 2 other television projects in development.
Right.
I'm writing a book with Tony Robbins at the moment.
Great.
You know, I'm just trying to keep very, very active and fun. Have a good time. I love succeeding at stuff, and I'm a member of a big entrepreneurial group.
Right. Can you name that? Or?
Yeah, it's called METAL. It's all men. It's Media Entertainment Technology. It was originally Media Entertainment Technology Alliance, standing for METAL. I think we now call it Media Entertainment Technology Alpha Leaders, because it's a lot of strong-willed entrepreneurial men.
Oh, that's great.
Occasionally, every 6 weeks or so, it's a co-ed event, but we meet every Saturday morning And it's pretty terrific because it's run by a guy who's a radio show host named Ken Ratowski, and he has a show called Business Rockstars, and he brings in incredible speakers, and every week he updates us on the great, fun, different, interesting things that are going on in the world of media or entertainment or technology. And then we network like crazy. I literally have, through that men's group, it shows you what networking can do for people. One of the things I teach in my classes is networking, because I have sold a movie to Sony, which I produced about 2 years ago,
Right.
and now the TV series I just sold to Fremantle is through Tom Beers, who's a member of Metal, who's the head of Fremantle, President Fremantle. So you know, the group has just been amazing for me. In terms of connections and in terms of my ability to help other people, which has been great.
Networking equals success.
Yeah, networking is, you know, it's interesting. I teach this class at UCLA called Stardom Strategies for Musicians, and I have phenomenal guests: Quincy Jones, Lionel Richie, you know, big all time. David Foster, the 27-time Grammy nomination, 16 wins. David comes in every year to teach in my class for one afternoon. And he is brilliant, and he is one of the best ever. And the first thing he says when he gets up there to the class is, "All right, what's the key to success in the music business?" And people throw out all kinds of ideas, and he said, "Networking." Networking is the key to success in the music business. So I fooled him this year. I pre-told the class. So when he said it, the entire class yelled, "Networking." I got him. But it's true, you know, networking is critical, but good networking, really good networking is, what can I do to help you? Right. When you reach out that way, it comes back. So
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
It's really about listening. It's not about trying to sell, is it?
No. Good networking is figuring out how you can help the person you're talking to.
Well, that's a good question for Ken Kragen, because you've got all kinds of people out there that have projects and things they're trying to get out. So they're vomiting their information all over people all the time, never listening. That's like, isn't that the worst way to sell? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I run the other way. I honestly do. I get that. I just got it a few minutes ago. I get that several times a month, maybe a dozen times a month or more. And, you know, it's very hard because much better is to establish some kind of relationship with somebody, help them in some way, and you know, that's the key to networking. You know.
Yeah. People. Well, you keep hearing this, but I think it's the truth. People buy from people they know, love, and trust. Right?
Yeah, it's true. It has to be.
Yeah.
You know, I teach a lot of things, but we were talking a little earlier today about one that I probably should bring up because I think it's fun. One of the things I teach is how it's easier to accomplish the impossible than the ordinary.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and people don't realize it, but it's much easier to take something that people view impossible and pull it off than it is what people go, "Oh, ho hum, I've seen that before," because the impossible gets people talking. They go, "Oh my God!" I mean, here, a good example is the Hands Across America.
Right.
I mean, how are you ever going to put 6.5 million people holding hands from New York to LA, and one continuous line at one moment in time? Forget it. It's impossible. Can't be done. But that very fact is what gave it all the attention it got. And in order to get people out, you needed attention. You needed the media to pay attention. You needed individuals to pay attention. And then once you start to see, once people think, hey, maybe he really is going to accomplish that. Gee, how can I help? Or I want to be a part of that. That's historic. You know, so, you know, the impossible has a wow factor that the ordinary doesn't. And if you want to sell anything to anybody, you know, you've got to get their attention, and to get their attention, you've got to do something that's unique or special. It's got to have substance to it. There's got to be a core that somebody cares about, right, enough to take action, but then it's got to be unexpected. And those three things, I mean, in my classes at UCLA, when I say the word unexpected, right through the room goes the UCLA marching band in full uniform. And I turn to the class and I say, look, you know, here's my question. Where is the marching band in everything you do? Where is your version of the marching band? Where can you find the thing that's going to get people to stop what they're doing and pay attention. Because if you want to sell anything to anybody, you'd better get their attention, whether it's a product or a service or an idea or yourself. If you want to get hired, how do you get somebody's attention? How do you break through the noise of today, the clutter of today, and get somebody's attention? And it takes a wow factor. It takes thinking about what you're going to do that's unique or special, has substance, and is unexpected.
And that makes so much sense, because there's a zillion great widgets out there, but if we don't know about them,
no, you don't do anything. And you know, it leads to another point. I mean, I have a whole series of stuff that I do, but it leads to something called the magic of threes. It's a very, very interesting principle. There's the Holy Trinity, the three wise men, 3 beats to a joke, 3 strikes and you're out. Even the bridge in most songs comes after the 3rd verse. In fact, scientists just in the last month announced that there is a law of 3 in the universe, that the planets and the stars and the things going on in the universe, there is actually a triangular law of threes. So I teach people something much simpler than that, and that is that if you want to get anybody's attention, you need to put at least 3 things that the recipient's going to get coming at them from different directions in an extremely concentrated period of time. That you have to reach it. One thing alone, and we don't have time to go into a lot of examples, but one thing alone is not going to do it. You're going to, no matter what, something's going to interfere with that. Maybe you got a text, or you got a email or something. Something's going to interfere with your carrying forward and taking any action on that. But if you're in that day's mail, you also get a personal letter from that person, and you just had gotten the email or the text, well, now maybe you will, but I can guarantee you, if then they open the newspaper and there's a story about it, or they look across the street and there's a billboard about it, or whatever, they suddenly say, wait a second, you've got their attention now, and now you've got a good chance of them taking action. And the only thing that people have to learn about that concept of the magic of threes, and I have a lot of examples of how it works in real life, but you have to realize that the recipient has to receive 3 things in a very concentrated period of time, very concentrated. So, JW, if I want to get your attention, I can direct 3 things at you.
Right.
But let's say I want to get everybody in the country, as many people as I can, to turn on this television show, or go to this movie, or buy this book. You've got to put 10 things out there, because the chances of any one person seeing 3 is very minimal. So you have to have a bunch out. That's why, look at the way any of the movie studios now advertise movies.
Right.
You're hit from every direction. There's somebody on the Today Show doing it. There's somebody, you see ads in the newspaper. You hear it on the radio. You get emails on it. You see it on YouTube. It's everywhere. And that's the way, and the reason is that the only way they're going to get you to take action and really go to that movie is if you can receive at least 3 impressions in a concentrated period of time.
That's wild, because that adds, because I laugh. You see me laughing here, because I talk all the time to everybody about, you got to do more than just come up with a great idea and wait for people to come. You got to put out content. People are not going to get to know you with this new social media thing unless you have a lot of stuff going on out there.
And here's the thing. You've got to do it in a tight period of time. If you spread it out over a long period of time, or if you think, the biggest thing, this all came originally, I mean, I realized I was doing it without knowing it, but a lot of times in the past, the Tonight Show was the breaking point for a lot of artists, supposedly. Right. But in reality, if you got on the Tonight Show and you surrounded it with nothing, you didn't get anywhere.
Right.
If you get on American Idol now and you surround it with nothing, it's still one thing, it's one place, it's one piece of exposure. You don't break through unless you can create all. I mean, look at Carrie Underwood now. Her career is huge because she's coming at you with different directions, with different things that, on television and records and stuff. Yeah. There's stuff everywhere. The example I use that really clearly, and we can take a second and I tell you quickly, the example I use that clearly demonstrated is Lionel Richie at the Olympics in 1984. I was managing him at the time, but I hadn't realized the principle of the threes. Lionel appears and closes the Olympics with All Night Long, and billions of people literally see that finale. 1,000 dancers, everything. No advance of his career, no change. I'm the manager, I know. No additional heat on his career. 6 months later, Lionel hosts the American Music Awards in January of 1985. Hosts the American Music Awards. That night, we record We Are the World. That week, he's in the cover of TV Guide. He releases a record that week, and also we have We Are the World out there. We do all kinds of press conferences for We Are the World. Lionel Richie is and he wins 6 American Music Awards that night, performs on the show and hosts the show, and about 3 weeks later, he's on the Grammys, and he wins 3 Grammy Awards and performs. In that short period of time, Lionel Richie is everywhere. Now, I will tell you, you can add up all the people that saw Lionel Richie in all those things in January of 1985, and they do not add up to as many people, anything near as many people as saw him in the Olympics.
Right.
And the difference is Lionel Richie's career explodes after January 85, as opposed to the summer of 84 at the Olympics, when the biggest piece of exposure you can get doesn't advance his career.
Okay, I got a question of you. And first of all, I want to ask you about, because we can go all day, we can go on all day about the resumes and all the wonderful things and all the successes you've had. Tell me about the failures. People think that you have to go out there and you're either successful or you're not. Tell me. Have you ever failed?
Oh yeah, sure, lots. And you learn more from the failures generally than you do from the successes. The Lionel Richie story is a great one. There are numerous times, that probably it wasn't exactly a failure, but it was something that I regretted for a long time. Someone sent me Elton John's record before he ever came to America, and it took me. It was the first album, and not just the single, the whole album.
Oh, okay.
And a record promotion guy sent it to me, and I was so busy it took me about a month to listen to it. When I finally listened to it, I went, "Oh my God!" So he was appearing in a little club in Los Angeles called the Troubadour,
right?
And I went down there and I hung out with him. But I thought to myself, "Boy, a month ago, if I'd thought of this, I would have contacted him before he ever got here and tried to get his representation at least in the U.S." He already had management in England. But I always thought back on that. We did become friends, and he was wonderful to me at the time, and he was very close with Lionel Richie, and so we spent some time. It's hard for me to think of a lot of failures because I have never viewed them as failures. I mean, one of the things I teach is, everything's an opportunity, even the negatives. Right. So even when something seems to go wrong, I always look at it as an advantage. If a client leaves me, a client I'm managing left me, I would think to myself, wow, I've got more free time. I don't have to put up with a lot of the crap that I was putting up with that client. Something better is going to come along. And boy, something better would come along. Something different would come along.
There's got to be a pony in that pile somewhere, right?
Yeah, there's got to be a pony in that pile. And I would always take that approach. So it's hard, as I look back on my life, I once said, and it probably is an overstatement, that I was successful with about 90% of the careers I managed and maybe 85 to 90% of the projects I took on. Mm-hmm. And I think that is partly, it's probably also my, optimistic view of what happened, but over most of the years of my life, going way back to the very beginnings, I seem to have always had success with it because, for one thing, I almost refused to fail. And I did learn things when things didn't go entirely right. There's a great quote from Thornton Wilder. It's, "Every great thing balances at all times on the razor edge of disaster." And every big project I've ever done has had those moments when it could fail. Right. And those are the moments when I never throw the towel in. I try to keep my eye on what we set out to do and figure out there's got to be a way to make this succeed. And there always is. Mm-hmm. Even so, the other thing, which is funny, as a manager with issues and problems, management was one crisis after another. A lot of times I found that if I couldn't get to the problem that day or night, by the next day it had sort of gone away. I don't mean in a bad way, it had just healed itself. A lot of times the crises that I would face in the management field particularly, were problems that somehow got solved without, my having to take heroic action of some kind. And it's strange how that happened, but I just found that was, I'd be so busy. I was managing so many superstars. Maybe I couldn't quite get to it,
Well, because you brought up a really interesting thing here, and and the other question I was going to ask you, actually, and that is, you said I never quit. So you must have a great third eye about talent, because you see those guys on American Idol that they can't sing, and the judges have told them they can't sing, and we know they can't sing, but they said I'm never going to quit. And the guys on Shark Tank who have this idea that nobody wants to buy, but they're going to mortgage their home, they're going to give away their kids' college fund to make this thing work. When do you quit? When should you quit?
It's rare for me to quit anything I believe in or start.
Right.
There are moments I look back on. I just was at a project 2 years ago that if I look back on it, it's probably never going to make a profit. And I look back on it and say, boy, with hindsight, I probably shouldn't have made it.
Right.
On the other hand, I look at it and say, I had so much fun making that project. It was worth it. I mean, sure, it's, but it... So, there are moments in time when those things happen, and there are moments in time when maybe you should have thrown the towel. I'm more likely, just my makeup, to never throw the towel in, and never to never stop if I believe, if I truly, and I try very hard not to get myself into anything I don't believe in thoroughly.
Right.
If I've had to talk myself into it, or someone else talked me into it, that's where it's a problem.
And is plan important?
Yeah, plan is very important. Have a plan, execute it, talk to a lot of people. That's the other thing. I'm a tremendous optimist, and a psychologist named Alan Lloyd McGinnis wrote a book on the power of optimism, and one of the traits of optimists, he said, was that optimists share good news. And my wife and my daughter are always a little surprised at me, and kind of, because I tell everybody about everything I'm doing, and I can't tell you how many times I find some new opening or avenue or something for what I'm working on, just because I shared what I was doing with people. And it goes back to that optimists share good news thing.
Wow.
It really has worked for me over all these years.
No, that's a great point. Whenever I wanted a job in the world, I just told all my friends I was looking, and for whatever reason, one came up.
No, every time I need anything, I let people know, hey, I'm trying to find a good plumber. I mean, whatever, you tell people, and somehow or other, somebody says to you, oh, I know one, or, I know somebody who has a contact to that person, or I know somebody who can solve that issue for you. It's
we started with networking, we're ending with networking.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it all comes in circles. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful to whoever's watching, and that you get something out of it.
Where can we find you, Ken?
KenKragen.com is the website, and I'm never selling anything, although my book is there and stuff, but you can buy it cheaper on Amazon. And I wrote a book called Life is a Contact Sport, which has a lot of my philosophy.
Right.
What I teach is much broader than this. I teach a 10-week course at UCLA. It's 30 hours long in total, and there's a lot of meat in it, and most of that is in that book. It was written from the course, and I think I've been very fortunate to have sort of fallen upon a lot of good concepts, and when I had to start teaching them, figured out how to put them down in a way that other people could use them. I think that's probably the biggest legacy that I'm leaving as I continue to do the work that I do.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you, everybody, thank you, Ken Kragen, first, for spending this much time with us. It was really great of you.
You'll have to cut it down a lot.
Yeah, we're going to have to do maybe a little editing. Probably not. I don't think there was anything you said that wasn't interesting. Everybody, this is J.W. Najarian with On Purpose Magazine. We're here today with Ken Kragen at the Viridian Energy Conference. I'd like to say, everybody have a great day and an even better tomorrow.